I probably should start personally, like where it came from for me.
Okay.
Um, my first alcohol and drug conference that I went to was in 1970,
Okay.
and it was run by a guy who was then running the Haight-Ashbury Clinic. So Dr. David Smith, and I didn't know anything. I mean, I drank through college, and I kind of stopped right afterwards. I wasn't very interested in it. And I met a really beautiful woman there at this conference who I later married.
Mm-hmm.
And she was an alcoholic in recovery.
Okay.
And our marriage fell apart because she really kept drinking after a couple years of sobriety. I knew nothing about this stuff. I thought for sure, I knew something. I had one class in undergrad. It was a sociology class that talked about the Native Americans and why they're alcoholics.
Worse than other.
Yeah, and the Irish and the Italians and stuff, and Americans. So I knew a little, but I didn't know anything about it until I had that experience. And that was when I first went to Al-Anon during our marriage falling apart about 73, 74. End of 74, I think it was. And so that's when I started writing a paper for the alcohol class I was taking in grad school. And in the paper I wrote, I don't want to work with alcoholics. It's too close to me, and I don't think I have any knowledge or skill. So I tried to avoid it because I've been through that trauma of being married to someone and having her fall apart and leaving her basically over her drinking. So that was my first experience with that. And we did marriage counseling for about a year, and really good marriage counselor, a really good guy, and he knew a lot about alcoholism.
Okay. So alcohol was addressed in the couples therapy.
So that was my first experience with it as a consumer.
Okay.
And I remember making the decision, driving home from one of those sessions, this is going to take forever. And I don't want to wait this long. I don't want children to grow up with this because we didn't have kids yet. And so I remember driving home from that session, halfway home, I made a decision, I'm done with this marriage. And it took her 10 more years to get sober. And she told me later on that if I had stayed with her, she might not have ever gotten sober. And in those 10 years, I didn't work with money alcoholics. They came to my office, but I didn't recognize them.
Yeah.
I ignored it. Just kind of like...
Didn't look for it, didn't... Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw a lot of other people doing that, too. And at some point, I couldn't help it. I mean, I was looking around, and like a woman would say to me in individual therapy, well, it seems like every guy I date is an alcoholic. And then I'd say, well, so... was your dad? Was your brother? The answer was always yes. See these patterns repeating. And at some point, I kind of shook off my denial and started looking around my caseload and saw that 70 to 80% of everything coming in my office was affected by alcohol or drugs. I think that's true today.
Yeah. And
then I'm going like, okay, dumbass, that's my usual way of approaching things. It's like, oh, why didn't you see this before? And I went to a conference with some guy, I didn't remember his name, in out of state, and he said, let me tell you about alcoholism. You want to understand this thing? I'm one of the world's experts. You're going to understand this, and here's how you do it. So I want you to imagine a bottle with alcohol. And over here is the nipple that you would use for baby formula. And you put that on top of the bottle, and there is the image of alcoholism. Unmet dependency needs. That was his theory.
Okay.
So I came back and I started thinking about all that. And I ran into some people who were sober for a long time. Had one partner who was sober for a long time, business partner. And more I got into like, maybe AA isn't as bad as I think it is, because I really didn't like it. It felt too religious for me.
Okay.
And I don't know what I am. I'm between an atheist and a highly spiritual monk. I don't know, somewhere in there. But I really was turned off by, I think, the Bible thumping part of it.
Okay.
And then I found out there are meetings that aren't that way and people that aren't that way. And at some point, I started discovering that I needed to deal with alcoholics and learn about it. So I took some more classes and did some workshops. And I picked up a mentor that started coming to my classes when I was teaching just couples and he talked about the alcohol drug interventions.
Mm-hmm.
And he came for about 5 or 6 years, and I learned a lot from that. Then he got fired from his company, which was he had one of those jobs where he was actually recruiting through the interventions for the hospital, which was kind of unethical.
Yeah, yeah.
So then I met this guy named Howie Madigan, and Howie is still my dear friend. And this is many years ago. I don't even know how many. I can't tell times anymore. But Howie taught the class and came as he's from Harmony up in Estes Park. And he had the job that Harmony said, you can do interventions with anybody, and they don't have to come here. So you just go out and do good in the world. So Howie would come and talk about alcoholism and talk about it. He showed this one famous tape. I don't know if you've ever seen it. What's it? Gosh, Father Martin.
No.
Chalk Talk.
Okay.
If you can find it anywhere,
okay.
It's awesome. But he was a very funny priest. Howie was a Madigan, Irish Catholic. And Howie had got sober about 32. And his wife was responsible. He always told the story that his wife said, I love you. After one night coming over at Bender, he saw all the kinds of luggage on top of the bed with her packing. And he says, where are you going? I mean, I can tell the story for him. I've heard it so many times. Where are you going? She said, I'm not going anywhere. You are. And she had 2 guys from AA come over to do 12-step work with him.
Okay.
So either you have to move out, and if you don't, you're done. Children love you and I love you, but we won't live like this. He's 6'4" and she's about 5'1" or something, but she made her stand. Yeah. And he went out and got sober, and he's been sober ever since, and now it's like 46 years or something like that.
Okay.
He's 78 and he's been sober.
Yeah.
So he started doing interventions later on. He got trained at the Johnson Institute, which is the original one that did that.
Yeah.
And he started training other people. And at some point he said, I have never trained a therapist to do interventions. Would you like to learn to do it? Because you got the family part. We're doing family interventions. This is a logical thing.
Yeah.
So he trained me in that.
Okay.
And I started doing interventions with him.
Okay. To get like co-interventions?
Right. First I tagged along and just watched and sometimes had something to say. By the end of about 5 or 6 of those, I was doing it and he was watching. And that's when I started realizing that I have to do more with couples. It wasn't enough to even to do the intervention and get somebody in treatment, because a lot of treatment centers would do a family week.
Yep.
And it wasn't nearly adequate.
Yep.
By the way, the first family week that was ever done, I was supervising the woman who started those.
Really?
Yeah, she started at the Old Mercy Hospital.
Okay.
And she had been, I can't remember who she was working for, but she said, I got this idea that we'll do a family week. She was one of our students from DFI.
Wow.
And she got a job at Mercy.
Okay.
They didn't know what to do with her because she was sober too, like me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a recovering person.
Yeah.
Which was hard for some people to grasp.
Yeah, that's kind of been the culture,
the old model, yeah. Until Sharon Wexheider Cruz's book. You read that one? Yeah, it's still one of the best books out there. It's like I can't find anything to really top it. She was pleading that the recovering community and the professional community work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Howie and I were already doing that. And thought, we got to keep this up. And later on, we founded the National Center for Intervention together, and we trained people. So that's how I got into it, and I was doing couples work anyway. So I just thought, oh, this is such a natural, and it was. It all started flowing together, and I started learning all. And the thing that helped me the most, and especially Howie helping me with this, I mean, he was a true mentor, and probably one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my life. I could tell people what meeting to go to at what time without looking it up. This is all before internet. I knew that which unit in the treatment centers was good, and that they weren't good this week because 3 people got up and quit. I mean, I had running information and always available, because Howie's job was to know everything. Community liaison.
Yep. Do you believe, and that's kind of sounds, in our social work roots as well, but I mean, do you see that as a valuable piece of working with families and couples that struggle with addiction, that we need to know the community and the resources?
Yeah. I mean, really know them. So today in Denver, Donna Schwartz from, do you know her?
No. Mm-mm.
She's from Parker Valley Hope.
Okay.
She's their
I know
community
there.
liaison. And she's also been nurtured by Howie.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
we're kind of like brother and sister that way. She's younger. But she's now the one I can ask.
Okay.
Because Howie's retired and out of
Yep.
that a little bit. He still knows. He still goes to 5
Mhm.
meetings a week doing 12-step work.
But it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of turnover in these places. There's, change.
And there's also a lot of everything staying the same.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been some change, and I have a fairly high-income private practice, and a whole lot of them live not too far from
Yeah.
here. So I know the ones up and down Hamden.
Yep.
I don't know the ones in Nevada. I know a couple cocaine groups up in that area, in Boulder too.
Yeah.
But I know all the AA groups up and down
Yep.
the street and into Cherry Hills.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
the Orchard Club and the places that my people would go to.
Yep.
And I learned how to tell people to get help, to go to these things. So couples will come in, and oftentimes the first thing I noticed, because I was slow, the first thing I noticed was couples would come in and talk about their fighting.
Yep.
And I go, okay, we want to fix fighting. And I started asking more questions, and, we only fight when we drink. One question really threw me off, and an answer threw me off. I asked a couple this, and it was stunning to me, a changing moment.
Okay.
They came in and talked about their fighting, and everything was going on, and I said, well, how much do you drink? And, not very much. Honey, how many of those gallon things of Jim Beam do we go through a week?
Yep.
2 a week.
Yep.
2 gallons a week between them.
Yep.
10 drinks a night each.
Yeah.
So this was the first time I'd run into the co-alcoholics.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one form of this
Yep.
couple stuff, and it's
Sure.
one of the most deadly
Yes.
because they just pull each other down.
Yep.
Another reason when people are in recovery, they shouldn't date other people in recovery. They can really pull each other down. So that was stunning to me that people thought they didn't drink much, just 10 a night.
Yeah.
10 shots a
I've
night.
found to always ask that follow-up question, to never, say, oh, not that much, once in a while,
Oh, yeah.
occasionally. Those are not answers.
No, those are obfuscations.
Yep. So, okay, what does that mean? That could mean a lot of different things to different people.
And especially when you sit in our chairs, people will say, not much, and they mean 10 drinks a night,
Yep.
and other people mean 10 drinks a year.
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
drink much either.
Yep.
I probably have less than a shot total every 5 years,
Right. But that can be the same answer,
Yeah.
depending.
Right.
So
always
okay.
have to pin that down.
Okay. Yeah.
But that was the first time I'd seen 2 people really that heavy into it.
Yeah.
And still functioning.
Do you do different things with partners or couples where both use, the co-users versus one partner?
Including how they came into it as co-users. The 2 people who met in a bar, both were alcoholics, co-users, are different than one person started drinking with the other one because it was more comfortable.
Okay.
And family histories, I mean, I
Yeah.
always do the
Yes.
family history on that one.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not always a big fan of doing a total genogram on
Genogram.
everything,
Okay.
but I can't
Yeah.
let that go when it comes to alcoholism.
Yeah.
That's the informative piece.
That's one of the key kind of ways to use it for you.
Well, but yeah, and also because so much of it's genetic.
Yeah.
I really think that half of it's at least genetic. So that's one kind. So the dual partnership. Yes, I treat them very differently because if for nothing else, I'm dealing with 2 people in serious trouble and health problems and sobriety issues and relapse issues versus the codependent.
Yep.
So you have the codependent model, which is one doesn't drink much at all, if at all, and the other one's a really severe alcoholic or just even a mild one. That's really tough. I'm thinking of people who've sat in these chairs as I look at them right now. Sometimes a divorce is the only answer, and that's hard. But they've got to save themselves and the child because the other guy, usually it's a guy. It's still, the rates are going up for women, but still men are dominating the worst end of it.
Yep.
But women are dying young too. So to me, this is all about keeping people alive. I'm not rigid about this stuff. I've seen too many therapists say things like, Well, like you got the sober lady there and the drunk guy
Mhm.
there who's the real alcoholic and clearly even knows it himself.
Mhm.
And if you don't go to AA and if you don't get sober, then I can't work with you. I've
Mhm.
seen that too often, and I will never do that.
Yep.
Because I still will look at improvement.
Mhm.
You know,
Kind of the harm reduction or controlled drinking. Are you?
yeah, harm reduction is like really important. I mean,
Mhm.
my last appointment is a guy who thought he had an alcohol and drug problem.
Mhm.
He's not sure yet.
Yep.
He only drank between 5 and 9 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
No DTs in the morning,
Mhm.
but he would drink heavily to kind of really out of boredom,
Yep.
habit, and a way to deal with the emotions that came with being left alone at night.
Okay.
Um, he quit 5 days ago, and he was one of those ones that determined that didn't need to go to detox because he never had any shakes in the morning.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
every morning he was sober all the way until 5 o'clock
Yep.
again. So I guess one thing to do is you have to know everything about the disease
Mhm.
to treat this.
Mhm.
You can't. I remember one question we used to ask when I trained people in role plays on the hotline I had.
Yeah.
Some guy would call up on the phone. It's the typical thing. He said, you know, I've been drinking really heavily, steadily for like 10, 20 years. You know, I start drinking in the morning and drinking in the afternoon. I'm thinking of quitting. What do you think? And
Mhm.
you hear some rookie go for it. That's really great. And we go, bonk, you just killed him.
Yeah.
You know,
Dangerous,
dangerous
alcohol withdrawals.
yeah, yeah. You know, you need to be under care for DTs. You got to
Mhm.
detox, and you know, usually somebody has to give you medications.
Mhm.
And for years, the AA community wouldn't accept medications,
Yeah.
and they're getting better at that. But there's still some
Yeah.
hardcore people that don't want that.
Yeah.
Because now I think the answer is, if you're going to get sober, and I'm educating them. If you're going to get sober, I want you on antidepressants right afterwards, because the suicide rate for people getting sober is 3 times higher than not.
Okay.
Because your brain's going to take a year to recover.
Yeah.
And they don't know this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to be directive
Yes.
here. This is not
Okay.
just applaud.
So your approach is to be directive,
and
to
educational.
educate.
Yeah, because
Right.
people don't know what they
Yep.
get. I mean,
Yep.
just
Yep.
like that rookie in the role play.
Yep.
Let's say, good for you. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, we don't just pat people in the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we do that, but we
Mhm.
can't just do that. So
Mhm.
you have to give them information. You have to talk about stuff. You have to work with their psychiatrist. I have a lot of
Mhm.
physicians that are really good
Mhm.
that with alcohol and
Mhm.
drug and withdrawal and
Yep.
cocaine and heroin withdrawal.
Yep.
And I need to know who they are, and
Mhm.
I need to have them on call and get information.
Exactly.
So it takes a whole team to do this.
Yeah.
I've had sponsors come into therapy sessions.
Okay.
You know,
Hmm.
let's have a family session about what we're going to do, and please bring your sponsor or sponsors if
Yep.
there's more than one.
Okay.
I also beat people up about getting a sponsor.
Yep.
You know, like, let's go.
Why do you see that as it's so important?
Well, I don't think you really can work that AA program,
Mhm.
and that still is the best one I know.
Mhm.
I mean, people have tried all the others, you know, the
Mhm.
alternative ones,
Mhm.
and except for the one that's Women for Sobriety,
Yeah.
everyone else seems to be unhappy with that. Everything.
Yeah.
Women love the Women for Sobriety.
And I think that has a lot to do with the power issues that it brings up.
And the
Yeah.
and the thing like in curves too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm not being oogled
No,
by a bunch
but-
of men. Nobody's
But
looking
yeah,
at my ass.
it's kind of like they can feel safe.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
right. It's like why curves is there, and why curves has
Yeah.
windows you can't see in.
Uh-huh.
I mean, women feel safer and more protected in a group like that.
Yeah.
So Women for Sobriety does work, but there are women's groups.
Yep.
In AA. So I've become a bigger fan of AA. I'm not
Mhm.
blind to its problems.
Sure.
Al-Anon, that's always a part of it. So if I'm seeing a couple where there's the codependent, but the other is strengthening the codependent. A lot of them are
Mhm.
really enablers. Like not just I tolerate it. I had one guy that was dying from his alcoholism, and his wife. I mean, he was falling down through glass doors,
Mhm.
you know, cutting himself up, bleeding, being taken to the hospital. And he wasn't even physically mobile enough to go get alcohol.
Mhm.
Couldn't drive.
Yeah.
Brain going really bad. And she would go out and buy for him. That's probably okay.
Yeah. Let's see.
She would go out
She
and
would get
buy
it for
for
him.
him.
Yeah.
And she wasn't trying to kill him. She had no underlying psychological thing. She was afraid of the conflict when he demanded it.
Yeah.
And she was afraid of the shakes and everything.
Yeah.
And she, you know, he'd been in, I think, 5 or 6 different, inpatient treatments.
Mhm.
And so I had to do a whole lot of work. And the biggest work for her was getting a social network where she could have support.
Okay.
and she wouldn't go to Al-Anon.
Okay.
So it was like
Creating her own kind of.
yeah, where are your
Mhm.
friends? What are you telling them? And did a lot of work with her, including
Okay.
a lot of being able to call me.
Okay.
So that's one kind of thing, is to
Mhm.
work with what does the codependent need,
Mhm.
and know if they're a codependent or if they're a co-drinker.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's different. Then I get people that come in here that are unattached and are alcoholics.
Yeah.
And there isn't somebody else to work with.
Mhm.
And in the between having time, before, I want them to get sponsors, but I
Mhm.
also will take their. I have some people that text me
Mhm.
every morning
Okay.
until they get their sponsor.
Okay.
How am I doing? What are you doing? I want to know that you're alive. I want to know
So
what
to
you're
be
doing.
kind of that bridge to serve some
Yeah,
of those
I
other
do a sponsor.
purposes.
I do a kind of a cheap ass
Yeah.
sponsor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not on call 24 hours,
Uh-huh.
but I want them to have something daily, and that's really worked well. And a lot of therapists don't like that idea and feel like every day. You know, I tell them what time.
Mhm.
You know, while
Yeah, you put structure to
yeah,
it.
when I'm
Boundaries.
reading the
Yeah.
newspaper at breakfast, I get a text. Hey, I'm really struggling today.
Mhm.
You know, I'm wanting to drink, and I'll type something back, and then I'll say, if you struggle more, call me, and we'll fit you in.
Mhm.
While they're going through that stuff, I think we have to understand that this is a disease. I'm really accepting that model. I didn't used to.
Yeah.
I used
What
to
changed your mind?
many things over time.
Mhm.
The biggest one is just the genetic evidence.
Mhm. Can you be both and? Can you believe in the disease or medical model and be a family therapist?
No, it's impossible. Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the disease model is real. I just don't want to be all pathological about it and all
Okay.
negative about it.
Okay.
I mean, I was at a wedding where two doctors were getting married, and they had one of their mentors. They put us all on one table, and the guy sitting next to me was a geneticist from Boston University. He was working on the gene work for alcohol and drugs. And he said, we're getting close. We know the sequence. I said, where's the gene? He said, it's not one gene. So, I thought it would be that easy.
Yeah.
I said, no, it's not one gene. It's a pattern. And we're getting close, and we think we've got it nailed. And it's like, makes sense. I mean, so I think it's a mistake that we made in early in family therapy to rule out medical evidence.
Yeah.
At the same token, I don't want to adopt their whole model of drugs, because I think we've got something better than drugs.
So how do you incorporate, this may just be your individual therapy style, Steve, but what family therapy models or theories do you feel like are good fits for working with people?
Everything's strength-based.
Okay.
I mean, you got people who are beaten down, who are seen as pariahs, and, one guy said, try to imagine that, you had some other disease like lupus, and they're going, you got to just buck up. You got to cut that out. Stop taking those days off. Get over it.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah.
It's like it is a real physiological disease as well as a psychological and social and cultural. I mean, biopsychosocial, neuro, those whole things all together. It's everything.
Okay.
It's killing a lot of people. And I am very fortunate that I'm having a high success rate. Most of my clients do well. I've lost some have died. But most of my clients do well. And it's exciting to me. The joy of that work is that I'm watching these people recover, and it's like watching a person come alive again, because they're dead.
Yeah.
They're really dead to their feelings. This guy today said, I don't smile.
Yeah. I think of it as like the ultimate disengagement from life, from relationships, from feelings.
And that wasn't the intent. The intent is, maybe I can handle this thing I can't handle better if I drink. And this is the side effect.
Yeah.
I'm scared to dance is when I started drinking myself in college. It was like, I could dance after 3 drinks.
There's real best intentions and needs
alcohol
being met.
The bitch of it is alcohol works.
Yep.
It does exactly what it says it'll do, except for at a price.
Yep.
I mean, if it didn't have the side effects of taking your soul and killing you, it would be.
What would the problem be? Yeah.
No problem.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
like the pot thing is really interesting coming up. People are always asking me, what do you think? Well, I'm against all drugs. Because anything, what David Smith taught me in 1970? He taught me to meditate. in self-hypnosis,
Mhm.
and pointed out that there is nothing that a chemical can do that you can't do for yourself. So I learned to hallucinate on my own because I like the hallucinogens.
You're like, I'll make this happen.
Yeah, so I can make that happen. I did a lot of that practice. There's not. I don't do dental work with any drugs.
Pain, yeah, killers. Okay.
I do it through hypnosis.
Okay. Wow.
I've had root canals
Wow.
without medication.
Okay.
So I really think that there's anything you can do with a drug, you can. Like, how can I get the courage to dance with a girl? Do it 17 times, and then you can do it.
Yeah.
How do I get over public speaking fears?
Well, just.
But some people drank.
Yeah. So normalizing the reasons.
Oh yeah,
and
it's
the needs
perfectly
being
good.
met.
And the reason they chose alcohol usually is someone else in their family did it too.
Yeah. That's what they grab. That's what they know. That's what's available.
Yeah, I
And
do
easy.
food.
Yeah. I'm curious what you think is, we've kind of talked about this, but the most important or some of the most important things to remember in this work, and what common kind of pitfalls or traps that people kind of go down. You mentioned, kind of as the therapist, you mentioned kind of this early on person just being like a pat on the back and, without understanding.
Pat on the back, the rigid stuff like you got to do it this way.
Okay.
I don't care how they do it.
Okay.
There's no one formula. If some guy says I want to do it on my own, great, let's go for it. And I take people where they're at and let them try their way. And if their way works, fine. If not, I talk early about it. Okay, well, if that works, fine. If not, we'll add another level of intervention until we get it titrated correctly.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's
So
what we did.
we don't have to have everybody go into treatment centers.
Yeah.
I mean, this man that came in 3 weeks ago, the guy with the dog recently, brought his dog in the last 2 sessions. And he just said, what treatment center should I go to? And I said, well, let me see if you're appropriate. And it turned out he didn't need detox. He didn't need a treatment center. He's only 5 days sober, but he's starting to think, so I don't have any bad feelings about this. I don't feel that different yet. I don't feel wonderful yet. I said, well, that'll take you a while. And it takes a year to completely heal the brain, and you'll get better constantly. So I keep drawing the graph for him.
Yeah.
And I told him to look out for depression.
Yep.
And if he sees any of that, he said, I'm already on antidepressants. I already have the problem. Yeah, but you might need an upping your dose.
Yeah.
So here's the way I use the medical community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's malpractice. I'll be straight. It's malpractice if you work with someone who's trying to get clean and sober and you don't look at their suicide potential.
Okay.
And you don't watch that closely, and the depression is major because it's a biological depression.
Yep.
Straight from, you're removing the thing that the neuroreceptors were getting off on for a long time. There's nothing to replace it. It takes a while to heal. A year.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So I think, those are some things that people do wrong. But the most important thing is don't be rigid.
Okay.
Be persistent. Don't give up. Don't ignore it. But don't be persistent. That there's one way to do these things. Because people find all kinds of ways. I mean, from cleanses.
Yeah.
That's the newest one.
Yeah. No, I was just at the store and they have like a tobacco, like, a cleanse in a box for smokers. Like, and just, so
well, look, almost everything we do has got a placebo effect in it.
Sure.
So if they believe it, I'll go with it.
Yeah.
And they can try it. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, we'll just up the level.
Yeah.
There are some people where I really want them to do detox, though. I want them to be medically supervised.
Yeah.
And I'll keep saying, don't quit. I'll say to people, don't quit drinking until you've gotten something like that lined up. And I know where the good detox is. I know where the chemical detox is. Do you know about those? I mean, you got to know that stuff. And most of it's not just alcohol anymore. It's alcohol and drugs. And they're mixing stuff. I mean, the biggest one is cocaine and alcohol, where they balance and try to keep balance. But I've had a lot of more heroin addicts in the last few years.
That's what we've talked about. We are seeing it out of control.
Yeah, well, the black tar is getting around the streets, and that's easy and cheap and easy to find.
Yep.
And it's a hard bitch to get over.
Yes.
So I go to treatment centers. I know the people in them.
Okay.
I visit. I have friends in most of them.
Yep.
And they keep me informed. And I have Donna Schwartz now that keeps. Who's a community liaison. There's a new community liaison at what's the one on shoots?
Oh,
Cedar.
Cedar.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I have contacted the new guy. The old
Okay.
guy wasn't very useful, but
Okay.
you got to
So
know
just kind
who's
of
out
keep
there.
trying, keep
Yeah,
learning.
yeah.
Okay.
And keep exploring. Go out and visit these places.
Mhm.
Go out and see the halfway houses.
Yeah.
Go out and see the aftercare places.
Yeah.
And my special area is aftercare.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm letting people know is a huge area or a huge need for family therapists.
And know what? Interventionists too.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
aren't enough family interventionists.
That also know therapy and
know what they're doing in a room.
Okay.
Yeah. So the family intervention is
Uh-huh.
the treatment centers have a place, and I have
Uh-huh.
contacts with the outpatient treatment centers, the teen. You got to know these places. This is the social work part.
Yeah.
You hop in your car and you go to these places.
Yep.
You don't just make a phone call and.
Yeah. Hope it works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crap.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right, Steve. Well, I just wanted to hear kind of what your take on this, on mixing these two fields and what's important, and knew you had a lot of an eye for it, and I didn't realize you tried to deny it in the beginning. I too was kind of freaked out about it, but now.
Well, I know people. I know people that are on our faculty that at one point said, "I don't see alcoholics,"
Mm-hmm.
and now they work with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't see them.
Yeah.
Because it's like when you don't ask, "Are you suicidal?" I don't
Yeah.
have suicidal patients.
Yeah.
Well, they can sit here and smile and be suicidal.
Yeah.
They don't tell you unless you ask.
No. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Steve.